Welcome. Today we're talking with Brian Sathianathan. He is the co-founder, the chief digital officer, and the chief technology officer at Iterate.ai. Brian, welcome, and thank you for joining us at today's Banker Digest.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege. Quite excited to be here. And definitely, I follow the show. Very interested in, being here today. Thank you again.
Thank you, Brian. So let's get started. So, Brian, when you're initially contacted by a bank, what are they looking for? How do they talk to you about what they need?
Great question, Larry. Typically, it ranges from, we have a given problem, and we want you to see if you can address this need. That's how typical conversations arise. We've also had conversations with banks, especially at the higher level, where new chief digital officers or new innovation officers come in, and they have much more of an open book. And a much more of an open agenda. So there it's mostly satisfying roadmap type capabilities, right? But I think the one that gets traction very quickly is when banks have some existing problems and they, the introduction meeting, typically they have an introduction meeting. Okay, we love to learn what you guys do. We've heard about you from other places or other banks. We love to learn what you do. And then that's where, we show them our low code platform and how quickly you can go to market by assembling these blocks together and having the ability to integrate things together. The moment they see that, a lot of the leaders in their mind sort of like the click moment happens. They're like, wow, these things can apply to my business, my problem. And then often the next conversation is, we have these three problems, but one of them is a higher priority. It was a budgeted project. We have some budget to do it. Can you start here? So we like the can you start here or start now kind of cases, because that always leads, because when the problem is there, you're not looking for you're not looking for a hammer, try to everything to be a nail. You're looking for the best fit that would actually solve that given problem. So we like the start here moments, right? And then, of course, as once they see that there is value created, we were able to deliver it on time, and it's highly scalable because it's not service work, it's actually software, that's been put together to solve the problem, and the same problem solving software can be applied in other places. Then they get excited, and often it starts with like an initial project, and it sort of goes into maybe another second initial project, and often turns into a large global agreement, right? So that's how these type of relationships build up, and they grow quickly, very quickly rather. Some of them are like 6 weeks start time, and then maybe another project for another 6 weeks, and then we talk about how do we structure this in an ongoing manner.
Great. Thank you, Brian. So in your conversation there, when you're working with bankers and their teams, it sounds like you often start discussing and trying to help them solve a current need, which may lead to a second need. Do you also get involved with building a development roadmap that has a longer term, more comprehensive view?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Larry. So what happens is, there are times when we, depending on who we are talking to, if we are talking to operational team leaders, right? Let's say mostly CIOs or like people under the organization who are responsible for systems, and they are often tightly coupled with a business group that is a user of the system. If a conversation starts there, typically it's always we have a problem, and can you solve the problem? But there are times where we've had conversations where we have conversations with the senior leaders, and that often happens not so much through the business development, not through the sales channels, but it actually happens through, we also have a large thought leadership, just like the way I'm interviewing you and talking about the banking world. We have a lot of thought leadership efforts inside the company. We attend a lot of seminars, we speak at different places, we talk in AI conferences. So a lot of times we end up encountering a lot of senior leaders. And then when we have conversations with the C-levels, primarily this happens often when a new CDO or a new leader has come in. Either there was a prior roadmap, but he wants to put together a new modified roadmap,
Right.
or there has not been a roadmap at all, a new position has been created to essentially think about digital in with fresh set of eyes, we are called in. So there are times where we help the leaders. We actually have a stacked roadmap framework that we built at Iterate. Unlike the traditional, the large consulting framework, the goal here is to get to market faster and reuse pieces as much as possible. So at the very bottom, we look at, what is your organizational structure in terms of, do you have the ability to work with startups? Do you already have groups that are looking at newer technology? Do you have a funnel to kind of capture that? Then on top of that, we look at what we call quick wins. If you put these solutions, you get quick wins from a digital perspective.
Right.
Then we talk about foundational systems. Like if you need to have these foundational systems in order to create these internal as well as external experiences, right? And then finally at the very top is business model and disaggregation techniques, right? So this is sort of like a layered framework we have.
Sure.
Of course, we are not tied to the framework. We'll work with whatever methodology. If the leader already has a system, then we'll work with that. But kind of setting up that whole thought process. We have a few people in our company in addition, because Iterate now, I think we are about some 100 people. We are growing really rapidly. So one of the things is, in addition to a lot of the engineers who are implementing the software, we also have quite a few MBAs, and they are kind of the strategists. We are not necessarily in the consulting business, but a lot of times when you start digital work and then trying to solve a digital problem, sometimes it's critical to bring these folks and kind of meet with the leaders and to figure out the overall business challenges and how they all sort of come down into building the right systems and the right software, and also taking the right approach, right? Because the best practice is critical in digital, right? There are times where we also have partnered with the big fours or a consulting company, and we'll sort of bring them in if there is already an existing relationship.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Brian. So, I'm thinking here that you talked about this just a little bit earlier, but based on Iterate.ai's pre-built tools, their templates, and your vast expertise that you've only touched the surface on, how is the timing to implementation affected, by your approach?
So what happens, Larry, the biggest challenge in a lot of these larger companies is that there is a lot of moving pieces, right? And there is a lot of legacy. And also there is basically disparate components that don't talk to each other. So because we provide a low code platform, low code, for the listeners who are not familiar with it, is basically what it means is, think of it like the software is like a piece of visual Lego blocks. And each piece of the software you can drag and you can connect them together and assemble your final solution. We have a lot of pre-built integrations to existing legacy systems or large systems, which actually makes it very easy to connect and they make data flow. In scenarios where data cannot flow and it's so old school, we have the ability to actually trap the events and use screen scraping. So we have tools to do that too, right? So that will sort of help free up the data flow through the platform. So that's step one. So we can actually, end of the day, data is critical to all these things, right? Sorry, that's my cat trying to so the data is critical to all these things. Second is the companies. If you look at today, in a lot of traditional companies like banks and others, they have a lot of web engineers, right? They have a lot of web engineers who can build applications, right? I mean, there is actually a stat, we did some analysis a couple of months back. There are 25 million web and application engineers across all these companies, traditional companies. But guess what? These companies only have 30 to 40,000 AI engineers, or like people who know the modern technology, right? So that's the gap. By providing the tool set, we can merge the gap. Now, going to your question, what happens is, if it's because a lot of pieces are built and it's sort of pre-built and it's assembling, it makes it much easier, right? Which actually gives us about 17x speed. So the more complicated the application is, the faster it gets, because we are designed for handling complexity, right? So in a
Mhm.
simple case, it could be as benefits up to about 1 or 2x, right? Or maybe 50% or 60%, right? At a very lower case. To at the highest case, we could get about 17x. And we have benchmarked this with customers.
Great, great. Brian, thank you very much. Thanks for spending time today with today's Banker Digest and helping us better understand the powerful tools Iterate.ai offers to accelerate digital transformation, particularly in that complex side that you talked about. So again, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Larry, and thanks for having me. And hopefully, your listeners will find it useful, and happy to talk to you anytime. And I
Great.
can be found at brian@iterate.ai, or you can
Yes.
visit our site, www.iterate.ai.
Thank you. So in closing, thank you for joining today's Banker Digest. If you have additional questions for Brian, please see the link in his bio.